Hiya, this is Kitten Features, and you're listening to Show X Live with Ken in a student accommodation all the way in Scotland. Wait, that was years ago. You're listening to Show X Live with your favorite Scotsman Ken, currently residing in the US of A, and Wayne, mostly from Colorado, but spending way too much time in the Howling Abyss instead of Summoner's Rift. Enjoy the show!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Show X on Twitch, YouTube, Mobcrush, Facebook, everywhere else that's in the world today. Welcome to the show, everybody. You're listening at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT on this Sunday, the 26th of April, 2020. And today, Ken and I are joined by a special guest, Nick. How are you doing today, sir?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing very well. Welcome to the show. So, because we have a guest, as we like to do, we're going to go ahead and kick off with a little bit of, as admittedly,
functional deviation.
There we go, as it plays in the background, taking its time to think. And this is going to be somewhat just kind of an open show where we talk about all the things interesting to us going on right now. Ken, welcome as well. How are you doing today, sir?
Thank you for having me, as always. Yeah, I'm pretty good. Sun's shining. It's not snowing anymore here in Michigan, which is, winter number 7 has passed, which is nice.
Well, I was going to say, for you, Ken, being that this is your first full American winter, the fact that you actually are getting snow and not just crusting of ice like you would in Scotland must be good for you to appreciate, that winter can actually happen.
Oh, yeah. Recently, it's been more of the Scottish weather where it's like a slight amount of snow, which I'm more used to. It was when I first arrived that we had the crazy snowfalls that was entirely new to me. But no, things are good, sir. Thank you for asking.
Outstanding. So a couple things problematic for our listeners in today. One, we're going to be doing another drive today for people who are following us on Twitch. And so Ken is all set to be putting out a whole lot more game codes that he went out and invested the show in another set of Humble Bundle codes. So we have a bunch of games to share with all of you. And so make sure you guys check us out, follow the stream, and we will throw out into the chat a new game key for each follow that we get this show. Just so we can help grow our end. Beyond that, also, you'll notice that Ken looks so much smexier this week. As we have gone through some iterations our end, he is following suit with me in that we are utilizing our cameras, our actual SLRs that we have, for more than just taking pretty pictures, but in fact, like streaming some pretty video of us. On top of that, something that this is just because I can't hold back the geek in me from an audiocast perspective, is that I have been playing with, for anyone that has an NVIDIA video card, and this is totally like geek side over the world technical piece, but they recently came out with a new beta, essentially, for what they are calling RTX Voice, that is admittedly designed to be something to utilize the CUDA processors on one of their 20 series cards in the RTX cards, but you can use with one of your 10 series, and since I have a 1080, I've got it running on mine. But what I want to showcase, and I'm actually curious to get all of you, both of your guys' reaction on stream to this cool technology, is they're using video graphics processing to clean up audio in real time, and they're doing it as a way to get rid of background noise and things like that. So I currently have it on with my voice, and hopefully you guys will hear this. So I'm going to turn it off. You probably won't hear much of a difference because it's coming through this mic anyways. But as I have it off, one of the things that you'll often hear, for me as a broadcaster, I've always hated hearing, is having guests in the studio and they get idle and start like tapping the table, or they start like whatever they may be doing. That kind of comes through as well, where I'm just like, why are you doing this? Distraction for me. Well, this software, as I kick it back on, it'll take a minute for it to go. But what's pretty cool about this is, hopefully, as it starts coming through now, I'm still snapping my fingers. The question is, do you guys hear that?
Clearly, yeah.
Yep. That's affirmative.
So for you, it's still actually, because you guys are listening. Oh, I know what I need to do. So that's through the show. I will set up so you guys can hear it the same. This is what I did differently. So from this, I can turn it to the output from it. Okay, so now that I've got the output on, can you guys hear?
Nope, we don't hear it at all. That's completely muted now. That's mad.
It's one of these things that it's a weird technology. It just came out in beta, but I've been throwing it out there for people because for me, as a caster, especially when I have other people into my local studio, when they're not used to what to do with themselves on mic, to avoid that kind of thing where people can just sit there and like bang the table and not have it go out to everyone to hear. It blows my mind, but makes
keyboard
me super...
input as well, right? So
yes.
You can type
Oh my goodness. So for those who've been watching forever, I have trained myself over time to like slightly, very, very like lightly tap on my mechanical keyboard. Now I don't have to. I can type during the show and look things up, and I'm just like, and not worry about it.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, I can give an example of that because as long as I get it off of anything that'll react. So mechanical keyboard typing, which you can hear, right?
Yeah.
So same thing when I kick it back on, and you'll hear it kick in here. So I'm doing the exact same thing, but now I'm talking.
I think the crazy thing is that when you talk, you think that it's about to activate and we can hear in the background. Like you think when the microphone starts listening more, it like tries to open up that noise gate. But nope, don't hear a thing.
Yeah, so
smart AI there.
For anyone curious, it is called NVIDIA RTX Voice. And like I said, it's designed for 20 series cards, but if you have a 10 series, it will work. You just, basically there's videos out there that'll tell you specifically how to avoid it, and I'll put it in this week's show notes just because everyone that's casting out there has been doing demos of this. I thought I would do it live on show just to kind of share it because I was like, what? And so now that you guys have all heard what it does, and I love how in our chat Games of Wrath is sitting there saying like, that's pretty wicked. Whoa.
Yeah.
And so yes, for everyone out there, if you have a card and you do any casting or recording, check it out. I've also seen demos of people use it against music tracks where it is almost completely muffled out the music and left just the voice. And
That's crazy.
Yeah, apparently it's a whole AI machine learned algorithm set that NVIDIA been working on, and they openly say it's still in beta. It hasn't been basically cleaned up for all their cards. They haven't done any performance testing. They've just done to say, does it work? So I can only imagine if it's in beta now, what it'll perform like once it's in full release. Anyhow, all right, so those are the problematic things. Let's get into it. Let's start talking. So to start things off, I will hand it off now between both you, Ken, and Nick to talk about why you're here, Nick, and to reintroduce everyone in our audience, how you guys met and things as such. So I will be quiet now.
Sure.
All right. So you guys remember a month or two ago, I flew over to Denver to meet Wayne. So this is the guy I actually was on the flight for, Nick, because I was actually visiting Wayne for, I think it's the third time we've met each other in person.
Yes.
And I stayed there for the weekend, and we hung out and we played a bunch of video games. And Wayne hosted his infamous Game Fest, which is this weekend of drinking way too much, eating way too much junk food, getting way too little sleep, and having a great time. And so that was my first proper Game Fest. You kept a count of which number of Game Fest you're on now, by the way. I'm curious.
So, just so it's basically a LAN party, having everyone bring their computers over, sit in my basement for a weekend playing video games together. And I took it on from a cast of people who have been doing it for over 20 years. And I started hosting after I built this house in about 2006. And basically, we would host 3 to 4 a year. And I have consistently since then. In fact,
it'd be quite cool to see which number you're on. I mean, like if you're on like number 50 or something, you could have like a big event, you know? That could be cool.
Yeah, we've never numbered them. We always just go like, and another one. And it's usually when my friends start messaging me saying, hey, we haven't seen each other for a few months. Let's game again. So I have no idea how many we've done.
How many people do you get at those LAN parties?
So I have gone anywhere from a range in the low end of 8 to 10 people, where it's kind of like just a handful, to I think the most I have configured in my basement was 32. Because I did, when I built my house, dedicated some time and such where I dropped a sub panel for electricity into the basement and ran a bunch of cables under the subfloor. So every different spot, except for the center tables, has their own like 4 outlet connection and an Ethernet port that all run back to my server rack, where I have several gig switches that run all the network. And so I think every one of those 4 is on its own 20 amp power supply. And I say that on purpose because we used to host these events rotating through different people's basements, where we'd have basically between 8 and 15 people in someone's basement. And the problem was always power, because most basements have maybe 1 or 2 outlets in them. And so we would have to run long orange extension cords from other outlets throughout the house and gather them all into the basement. And we were
you need one person to
constantly
drop a beer, right?
Oh, well, it was more that we weren't, it was hard to account for various people's computer setups where someone might have a 1,000-watt power supply or this massive monitor and someone else has a regular one. But we would pop a fuse every Game Fest and suddenly like 4 computers would just go right off. And so when I built my house, I specifically did all those things to negate it and have never had that issue. We've never had a circuit pop. We've never basically had loss other than me maximizing what the internet provider I have could handle as we were all updating and doing things, which is also why I used to run business class internet. I'm silly. Don't be like me.
So yeah, I flew over there for that purpose, and on the flight, I had an audiobook ready, and I was going to sit there and listen to an audiobook for a couple of hours. And Nick very kindly said, "Hey, nice to meet you." And you're just being a nice gentleman on a flight, and you know, you just said hi and introduced yourself. And it's something I'm not very good at is introducing myself to strangers. But we ended up chatting because of your nice nature, Nick. And we ended up chatting for the whole flight from takeoff all the way to landing.
It was very surprising. Yeah.
Yeah, and we talked about both of our professions. We talked about life, the universe, everything. We talked about philosophy, technology.
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings. We talked a lot about Lord of the Rings, actually. And that's why. And after that chat, I said, "Man, you gotta come on the show because I think you'd be well suited to it." You say you're not a geek in terms of video games too much, but hey, man, if you read Lord of the Rings now, and
I finished it since we were on the
good
on the
man,
call.
well, that's something we can talk about. That's something we can talk about. And in general, you're clearly a very passionate guy. And when we say the word geek, I think most people generally think of video games and TV shows and film. But I think it goes further than that. I think geekery is pretty much any kind of hobby or profession that you're passionate about. That's the way I see geekery, right?
Yeah,
So,
loving something that you love for the nature of itself, right? That it doesn't matter.
Absolutely, and that's why I thought you would fit in nicely here, because you were clearly a guy filled with passion for the various things you do in life. So I just wanted to take you on and just ask you a bunch of questions and have a general chat. I was particularly fascinated by the nature of your medical studies. You were talking about the various rotations that you've done and your interesting experiences. So another thing I wanted to talk about today is your time as a medical student. I don't know if you guys visit Reddit much. I think you both do, right?
I do. Yeah.
On occasion.
Yeah. Okay, so
yeah, on occasion, yeah.
I know I shouldn't say it, but I live on Reddit. So I follow quite a lot of the subreddits that are based on tales from, and then it has a profession name, right? So like tales from the squad car. So it's like police stories from the perspective of policemen and policewomen. And some are more dull things like tales from the customer, where you'll hear people who share their interactions with shops and the likes, and some of them can be crazy stories, some can be nice, wholesome ones. And one of the more interesting ones is tales from the doctor's office and tales from a nurse. Yeah, these things are great because you can hear such crazy, crazy stories. Some so wholesome, some so heartwarming, some quite the opposite, chilling even. And as somebody who's just entering that world yourself, we'd love to hear your perspectives on the various experiences you've had and whatever you're comfortable talking about. I'm also aware that a lot of medicinal tasks are quite heart-wrenching, and they're difficult to talk about and emotionally traumatizing. So obviously we don't want to be pressuring you into asking about you digging into the most difficult experiences you've been having. We just want you to chill out and talk about the things that you want to talk about. All right. So there is no pressure here. All right.
Sounds great. Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, honestly, at the forefront of my mind isn't the emotional turmoil that comes with, telling stories about medicine, but really what I'm worried about is this is kind of my first podcast that I've ever done. Right. And so I'm just I want to make sure that I respect all the patients that I've ever seen with HIPAA and make sure I don't disclose anything. So I'm like, that's at the forefront of my brain. So I kind of got to relax a little bit and
just no names, we'll keep the innocent, keep them safe. But and I am curious how that works when it comes to like discussions about things that have occurred. for some background, like my father, because I've had some of these kind of discussions in the past, used to be a cardiopulmonary technician for basically his whole career. He was in the Navy initially as a corpsman, and then when he came out after learning how to be a cardio tech in the Navy, continued that at several hospitals in Nebraska. And so we had a couple things. Wouldn't hear a whole lot of stories from him because I guess one of the most poignant things I ever got from my father was when I finally asked him a direct question, having done this for years. It's like, how do you deal with patients who've passed away? And he had, just from his perspective in his lab, a thought that I took me back for a moment. But he said every patient that he sees is already dead, because if they were not getting the care that they were going to receive in the cardiology lab, they would be dead in moments after that. And so the fact that they were in there, they could do as a team was save their life or not. Like, they either saved them or nature went about its course and such. And so it was for me, just kind of an eye-opening way of how they dealt with some of the harder things that come along with being involved with the medical profession. But yeah, no, don't stress it. The nice thing with the podcast aspect, right, is we keep it light. It's conversation, but kind of start
if
things
you
out.
are concerned with anything HIPAA related, obviously just skip that, right? There's no pressure here. We would never want you to endanger your career here, right?
I don't sense any danger on the way. I think we'll be okay. I do. But as far as my perspective goes with all those things, it's a very young perspective, right? So I'm in my third year of medical school. So take everything with a grain of salt. But Wayne, my perspective is kind of similar to your dad's. I've seen patients die, and I've been part of the team that's part of the resuscitatory efforts, and it's a really sad thing, and it's something that you have to understand is that that patient came to you at that time where they were at the end of their ropes, kind of like how your dad said, and the only thing you could do is the best that you can do at that time, and other would run its course anyway. And so that's kind of what I think about. I've had times when it's been really difficult to get through, and then other times, I mean, obviously medicine, the reason that we go into it is because of all the happy things that you can do with medicine. There's so many wonderful experiences to share with patients. I think of it as patients come to you basically on their worst day. And so that's an opportunity to help them, through the worst times that they could be experiencing. So I think that's
a very refreshing thing to hear. I think my perspective of healthcare in the US has been, I've only seen the sort of economic side of it. I see people talking about, I'm so used to a public healthcare where even the medicine, even prescription medicine is completely free. Even if you want to get even something that's kind of seen as an extra thing, like a breath reduction or something like this. Generally speaking, it's free in Scotland, so long as you have a good reason for it. I mean, if you can argue that you're depressed and you have mental health issues due to a body disorder, you can actually get free surgery, right? Mm-hmm. And then free therapy, and then maybe even free prescription pills to help you get through the ordeal. So when I first came to the US, my all I've seen of medicine is the big price tag attached to it. So it's super refreshing to hear somebody actually say that, oh no, we actually care about people as well. That's kind of important. I know it may seem ridiculous and maybe obvious to most people here who are already used to the price tag being attached, but for me it's just very humbling to remember that you guys really obviously care about your patients, and there's a reason you go into medicine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and from the side of the healthcare provider, I mean, at least I don't know what things cost. Like, I mean, my guess for us, any given procedure, my guess would be $500 to $5,000. Like, you really don't know as a healthcare provider what things cost. And I assume you learn that more as time goes on, you get an idea. But there are other things too, and forgive me because I really don't know a lot about this, but hospitals bid on prices, right? And health insurance bid on prices. So when you go into a hospital to get a procedure, depending on the day and what the hospital bids, they overbid so that the insurance companies underbid, and then they find a spot in the middle. But it's confusing as heck.
Yeah,
that's about as far as my understanding goes. So
yeah, no, I know that I think that's something that any of us in the U.S. dealing with medical anything have concern over. I know that I watched as insurance has changed, how it affects my regular procedures, because I used to be under such a thing where my copays were all like $20 at a time, and I'm that good. Insurance loves me because I pay it and I barely use it, that I go in like once a year for a checkup and almost never have any actual health concerns I need medical care for, thankfully. But on the other side, then I come back, and after things have adjusted and insurance policies have changed, now my copays sit somewhere at like $50 or more, and my level of what I need to prepare for is higher. I think the only level of like insight I got again from my father was he had told me at one time that the hospitals he was around, the tech side of things, he actually would get pulled over to a lot of these big conferences where they would negotiate with providers for equipment, the cost of various things. And he shared with me that they spent a lot of time working with the cost of stents, and how there was a point where, I forget who the provider was, doesn't matter, but they were basically pushing for the hospitals to be paying somewhere in the range of like $3,000 or $4,000 a stint kind of thing, or how that cost go to the patients and such. And they were able to work with like a whole conglomerate of hospitals to say, oh, heck no, that is ridiculous. And they cut the price down to somewhere around like $1,200. Still a ridiculous price for arguably a very simple in the cost of materials piece of equipment. But some 2 to 3 times cheaper than what they were trying to get the hospitals to pay. And things like that. So I got to get some insight that the providers, right, the actual, doctors, hospitals, things like that, are constantly working to try to reduce costs for their patients that a lot of people may not see. Because I have my own personal theory or thought on that most of the cost that we see is driven up significantly by insurance companies and kind of those middlemen when it comes to money. That's just my thought.
Are you still with us, Nick? I've noticed some internet issues.
I see a frozen face, and so I'm not sure if our call has
That's all right.
between.
We'll continue on in the meantime.
It's a good moment face, though. It's a good solid face to be stuck on.
Because I know whenever the camera freezes on me, usually my tongue's out, or I've got some snot going down my face or something. So he's quite lucky that he froze on a very passive expression.
Well, if you could message him and make sure everything is good, because it's interesting for me talking in general about just medical things, because this is something that all of us, everybody has to deal with at some point. And I've always been really interested in hearing the differences between different countries. And we used to talk about this a lot, Ken, as well as with Copy and a few others, Pusa and such. So we could kind of get that range of different experiences with the various people's health and like what they've either run into themselves or just what they were aware of for different procedures and costs around. Because the more I've heard about things, the more I believe that the United States could benefit from looking at how some of these other countries do their healthcare and perhaps lean towards.
For sure.
I never think, and this is one I think one of the challenges we run into whenever these discussions come up, is that it often comes through as though there's only either one answer or another, and not that there's a potential real answer of somewhere in between. And so I always struggle where, hey, we got you back. Good deal.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
Things happen. It's the internet. We have learned to flow with these times. We were saying that you were fortunate because when it froze on one of the more a more positive face.
Yeah.
That you were stuck right where you were like leaning in interested versus the normal derp face we'll get.
To be honest.
That's what I was worried about. I was thinking that 45 seconds is scary.
Whenever it freezes for me, it's always my tongue's out or something. Like I'm doing something ridiculous. So we were talking about health insurance and everything, but that's an aside. That's more of a side effect of your work rather than direct thing. So I'm very curious to hear about a little more of what we talked about on the plane, which was your various rotations, right? So do you want to tell us about your what rotations you've been through, your experiences with them, which ones you prefer, how it's affected your career choices so far?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I am in my I'm almost done with my third year of school. The first 2 years of school, you are mostly just studying books and having exams and didactic, like formal classes. And then your third year, you're just doing rotations throughout the hospital and have other side didactics about once a week to study from. So I started. My first rotation was actually OBGYN, and I never would have thought that I would find that amazing and cool. But I mean, that was awesome.
Ah,
That was really sweet. They have you assist in delivering babies and assist during C-sections, which is just the most, honestly, not to be cliche, but just magical thing in the world. From my perspective is, when you're in a room with, 5 people, 6 people, and, the next thing you know, there's like a whole nother human baby in the room with you. It's just like matching that with the idea that that baby was, inside the mother to be. I mean, we're all men here, so we don't really know what it's like to even have the notion that it's possible to have another human inside of you. But there's the theoretical thinking about it, and then there's actually seeing it happen, and that was pretty awesome. Now I don't want to go into OBGYN, but that was sweet. I mean, that was really cool. So that was my first clinical experience, basically.
wow.
Do you think it's intentional? Do you think it's intentional that the first rotation is that everybody's first rotation, or is it just yours?
No, just mine. So I mean, we're all kind of staggered, all the students. Everyone can't be on the same one. So, and that was actually a really rare one to have as your first one. They kind of ease you in with, kind of just general practitioner, family medicine type of thing. But my first one was OBGYN, which is a surgical surgical specialty because they're doing surgeries. So, I mean, that was awesome. I'd only ever seen a C-section delivery once before, that whole month-long rotation. That was in Mexico, and it was very different. But so that was my first rotation, and I've done most of our what we call core rotations. So from there, I did general surgery, and I've done emergency medicine and family medicine, anesthesia. I've done almost all of them. All I have left to do is pediatrics and neurology. And that's it, yeah. And then I'll move on to my fourth year, which is essentially you do electives and apply for a residency where I'm starting the fourth year. Yeah. Do you have any questions about specific specialties or?
Many.
Like I said, I have very limited experience. So.
You've got a lot more experience than we do, though. You see, the reason I asked about whether OBGYN is something that most people go through first, I was expecting that it may have been because you want to sort of weed out anybody who's going to be squeamish, right? I imagine there's a lot of people who go into wanting to be a doctor, but when they're actually confronted with the real gory experience you get on the job, I imagine there must be some people who either pass out at the sight of blood.
Oh, right. Oh, for sure. I'm not squeamish at all. I enjoy seeing all the things, but multiple times the surgical nurses would be like, "Have you eaten breakfast today? Like, make sure that there's a stool nearby." Like, no one trusted me as a freshman student that I wasn't gonna faint and be the next patient unconscious on the surgical floor. So, but I was always fine. I enjoy watching all that cool stuff. But yeah, definitely. It was an interesting rotation to be my very first one because it's just a very small section of medicine, obviously, delivering babies. So it was pretty cool.
Well,
It
and
really
like you're
made me
saying,
think,
that kind of connection to first life seems like that is a massive thing. I imagine that would have a lot of impact. That when you go right in saying, "I'm now doing it," right? I'm in where the procedures are happening and such, and my first experience is to welcome in new life. That has to, I would believe, be impactful. Where you talk about the gore side, but that other entire side of not even at this point of I'm saving life, I'm fixing. I am just you're being involved in the process. Yeah, you're helping the natural process happen and being there right at the beginning. To me, that seems huge.
oh, for sure, for sure. I remember the first newborn neonate that I held. The attending was like, "Nick, come here, touch the baby. You can feel, getting me," because I'm just like, whoa, you know what I mean? And they're like, "Get in here," they're trying to include you. And I'm like, "Okay, great." And he's like, "Okay, scoop the bottom." And then next thing I know, I'm just holding the baby, just totally not playing. I was like, "Wait, I allowed to hold the baby? You know, I was doing a good job, but it was scary. It was, I mean, a minutes old baby. It definitely, I think, Wayne, the way you said it, really illustrates the idea of their first experience in medicine being kind of their introduction to life, new life. It was really cool. Yeah, it was really cool. It definitely solidified uh, uh, my passion for
Very cool.
do
Very
this.
cool.
You're always second guessing, you know. It's crazy.
That sounds like a beautiful, that's a beautiful description of an experience that I think is something hopefully all people in life get to experience once. Not necessarily from having their own children, but at least being there for that process and seeing life occur. The new genesis of life, I think, is a very special thing. I've never experienced personally. I've never seen death, and I've never seen life in that sense. And you say that I'm older than you. I feel like in many ways you're older than I am. I think to have seen those two things will age you in the sense of wisdom massively.
Maybe. I'm trying to be wise out here, but I think that comes with time.
I remember when I was 18, I had a friend who worked in an ambulance. He was an EMT, and when he first started, we were all 18, so we were drinking too much and having a good time and going out and everything. And one day he came over to hang out with us, and he was just acting. He was just completely not there. And we were trying to like joke with them and we knew they must have had an experience that was rough, and we really were struggling to get him out of it. And he just he bounced back eventually, but it took a few days. It wasn't like it was a couple of hours or anything. And it was because he ended up being at the scene of a really, really bad accident. And he was the first responder, so he saw a lot of people in really bad shape, and at the end of their life. And he said to us later on that was his first time experiencing death in such a in your face manner. He said he'd seen it before, like people who'd already passed, people who passed kind of gently, but being at the scene of an accident, and actually seeing the gruesome side effects of it, he said that he really gained a new respect for the job. Whereas previously he would he would drink too much the night before working, or he would he would just be kind of immature about his life and his profession. But once he had seen some of the real aspects of his job, he grew up very quickly. He started taking it very seriously. And that's what I mean by that sort of wisdom that you gain. I think you do grow up quickly when you see when you accept into your life that kind of I don't want to say risk, because it's not necessarily risk. It's those experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. It goes from the mindset of, all right, I'm studying this thing, and I need to study it to make sure that I get the right answer on the test so that I can become a doctor. And then sometime, during these experiences, the switches, and that's almost like a hard switch where you go, okay, now I'm studying these things because I need these. If I don't know these, I'm in trouble. My patients are in trouble. It's that internal drive that okay, I got to know these things, and that is a hard switch to flip. You call it wisdom and growing up, and I don't think that's far off. For sure. Yeah.
No, that's
of course.
Cool.
We're only spitballing here, right? We're talking about the idea of the thing. We haven't experienced it, like you said. So
I've never experienced like loss of life as it's happening. I've seen accidents, I've seen people who've passed, things like that, and it adds to your knowledge and your awareness of things. But I don't know, it's a different kind of thing for you in particular, though. How much? Well, so I guess backing up for someone who's totally unaware of this cycle of going through grad school or going through med school as a whole, how much time or when do you get into actually participating in the hospital? When does it go from like learning in traditional school sense and labs, and because I always see things about cadavers and stuff like that, where you first just kind of get in with things, to that transition into we are doing actual time in the hospital with real people and patients and things like that, taking it beyond theory into practice and such. How does that kind of work in the medical training in school?
Right. So during your first 2 years, like you said, you're doing kind of the classic classroom laboratory. The very first thing at my medical school that we do is the anatomy lab, and there's just a full semester just dedicated to anatomy. The cadaver lab, or we call them we call them donors because they've donated their bodies. We try to make sure that one is respectful to them, and then from there you do all the coursework in basic sciences, and then systems, biological systems courses like respiratory, cardiology, gastrointestinal, things like that. Really, once you're into your third year and you're starting your rotations, you're a part of the healthcare decision making team right then. And it's kind of like I explained that switch flipping, because I remember my very first shift in the emergency department. My attending asked me to go check on this patient in this one room, and they were pretty sick. And so I did my history taking and my physical exam. I'm going to go back to the attending, and the first thing he says is, "Okay, I got to go see this patient in this other room, and I got to go do this thing. Is patient in room whatever, room 2? Are they sick? Do they need to see me right now?" So it's like, okay, I mean, they're not giving you that much responsibility, but it's kind of, I have to triage these people. Does he or she need to be seen right now? I have to make that decision. Yes, okay, go. And then if it's something urgent, and you made a really good decision. If it's not something urgent, then you didn't kill anybody or cause any harm, but so it's kind of things like that. They'll send you to go see a patient. They'll ask for your summary of the case of the patient, if they're sick, if they need to be seen right now. They'll ask for your suggestions as far as treatment option goes, or studies that you want to order. And it's usually extremely rudimentary, like chest X-ray, things like that, ultrasound, and just kind of using what you've known in your gestalt and your just how you feel about it. And it's kind of, and that's kind of the art of medicine throughout your training. They're always questioning you, that Socratic method of asking you questions, making sure you're going down the right path. And that continues all throughout your career, hopefully, if you're trying to be the best doctor you can, you're always trying to learn. So that's really the third year is when you start to interact with patients heavily, and at least in some regard have decision-making powers. There's obviously safety nets. So, you tell the resident what you think, and then the resident tells the attending what they think, and then everyone as a team talks about it. And it's interesting to see because there'll be times, the attendings are teaching the residents who are new doctors in training, right, still, but they are doctors. So a lot of times the attending will really put the onus on the resident to make a decision, because they know that you have to start making decisions. If you never kind of leap across that divide and make a decision, you're never gonna be able to make it, really. So
yeah, you've got to have that confidence. You've got to be able to do it. So that makes sense, because I was kind of curious. From that, you had to have been in some kind of experience that you went through where you really weren't sure at first, that you got something that you had to make a decision on. You're like, wow, well, this is my best, attempt, my best based on what I know and everything I've done. Here's my go. Had you run into any that you, I guess, were corrected, or in some way where maybe you didn't get the full scope of something, and so when you saw that, you were like, whoa, okay, this is that learning process. This is where now I understand I need to also pay attention to this, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, all the time. Absolutely all the time. I say I don't know all the time. A kind of a classic thing a student does is like they think that they hear like a heart murmur or something.
Okay,
and
yeah, something off.
And so constantly always being like, I think I heard this murmur, but you should listen to it, to the attendings. And I've been writing, and it's been totally benign other times, but it's that error on the side of caution type thing.
Of course,
you're always guessing yourself, which is good. But yeah, what was the question again?
So we had a question. Oh, sorry. We also had a question in chat that we can get to in a moment. Sorry, Wayne.
Well, no, you basically answered, because I figured there had to be those moments where you give it your go, and sometimes you're just like, wow, I didn't take that into account. And I mean, because it's like you said,
Right.
it's always a learning process, and you'd hope that would continue throughout your career. That you're never going to know everything. And you're
Right.
dealing with anatomy, human body, nature. Something changes constantly. You may have a lot of things that are
Mhm.
very similar that we build our basis of knowledge on, but there's always going to be something new. There can always be things where it's a buildup on top of multiple symptoms, multiple things going on, and so I can't. I
Oh, yeah.
imagine that. I mean, just the learning process itself has got to be so intense or just so continuous in everything.
All the time. Yeah, all the time for sure.
So, as Ken
Uh,
said, we did have a couple questions coming in from the chat. Our resident Bostonian, Hando, started off right away because he hears medical and he's like, "I'm in Boston." He's like, "Where are you? Where's Nick at right now?" Because he has to have been in Boston at some point to study because we have like med schools everywhere.
Well, the medical school business is very lucrative, so there's medical schools everywhere. In Michigan, I think there's like 7, and I'm in Michigan. Actually, one thing Ken and I bonded over is the fact that we're both students at Michigan State. So, yeah, I'm in Michigan. I don't think I've ever been to Boston actually. Maybe drove through, but yeah, I don't think I've ever been to Boston.
Sorry, Hando. I mean, Boston is as big as it is. It doesn't hold the nexus for everything.
Sorry.
His other question that he also asked was, what are your thoughts on the Bernie plan? Do you think it's viable? So I'm guessing that's Medicare for all in general he's asking about.
All right. So, from perspective of like, I really don't know much about the whole medical ecosystem infrastructure, but I think it sounds like a good idea because one of the things that it's really that's a hard question for me to answer because I think of myself as someone who's extremely naive to how it all works. But from the perspective of seeing physicians and attendings have to deal with insurance companies as they're trying to treat their patients, sometimes a patient interaction can be 40%, interviewing them, asking their history and doing a physical exam and making a diagnosis. And the other, 60 to, 50% of the interaction could be figuring out, okay, can you afford this medication? Can you not afford this medication? Does your insurance cover this? Do they not cover this? So you have to kind of, each patient, you might have a clear-cut diagnosis, how to treat them with the best scientific, method possible. But then you have to kind of figure out the specialized plan for them given their insurance. So from the both because I think everyone does have a right to healthcare and to be healthy, and also the fact that it would make my life a lot easier. If I would have to say that I'm for Bernie's plan of all. But like I said, I don't know much about economics.
Well, and I'm sure that's the kind of stuff that as you get in there and maybe see some more things behind the scenes, once you're fully, a doctor and in part of it, you may have more information to work off. I know,
Right.
even if it's not to the nit grit details, and I've said on this show many times that I don't believe there's a black and white answer on almost anything. And so where unfortunately in political times, you hear people try to rah towards one specific answer or the other specific answer. And I most often think that there's some answer in the middle. Wayne's view of the world when it comes to medical stuff would be, hey, if nothing else, as we like to tout in the US being such a strong country, I feel like we should be able to provide general life-saving and care for everyone at minimum, where everything that you need to survive and live a normal life should be covered and free. And if we need to still have insurance companies on top of that to do some things, let that be for the procedures that you have choice about how you want it done, or if you want it done beyond what the base care allows. That's again, I like some kind of hybrid process, but that's just my view of the thing.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense for sure. What are you saying?
To put it simply, I'm no economist. My PhD is in computing science. I'm talking about surely from my perspective of the world in a non-educated manner. I guess this is just my thoughts from what I've heard through other readings. But if you just look at the GDP by country lists that are out there, US is number one. The GDP is a little bit over $19 trillion a year. Then it's China at 12, then Japan at 4, Germany at 3, and it goes down from there. The thing is, if you look far down that list, most of the countries in the top 25 have healthcare that's free for the public, and they don't have as much money as the US, and often they have, less GDP per capita. So where's the money in the US going from taxes that isn't medicine? I think we know the answer, and I'm not trying to say whether that's good or bad. My point is that clearly the US can afford it. It's just whether it's appetizing for those in power in the US, and that's a different question entirely, right?
Yep, and again, we can get into the politics to so many levels, but at least for me, I feel like healthcare as a whole is something that a country like ours should be able to handle pretty well. Like, come on. We like to tout that we know the most. We should be able to provide the most as well. So,
yeah. America, if you want to be number one, you got to prove it,
Yeah, let's focus on those things. Healthcare, education, all the stuff that continues to keep us number one. But
yeah. All right. So, chat, please feel free to ask any more questions for Nick. We're very interested to hear if you have anything else to pass on to him. So Nick, you mentioned as well on the plane flight. You're saying that you moved to your psych rotation recently. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did. I did that. What was it in March? Yeah, I did that in the month of March. Actually ended up only doing all of your rotations are supposed to be 4 weeks. Call it a block. But that ended up cut short because we got pulled from our rotations after our 3rd week of that. So I did 2 weeks in the VA that's nearby here, and then I did 2 weeks in inpatient. So yeah, but I wish that it wasn't cut short. So right now we're doing everything online from home, and the way it was explained to me is that the hospitals just don't have enough PPE for students to kind of be going around learning alongside. That's almost, that's valuable PPE that can be used for other help. Yeah.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, actually, because I was going to ask essentially that question, because in this time of, in many cases, social distancing, in other cases, quarantine, for a lot of people, you being right there in the medical field and learning, that's a crazy thing, because those are, as we keep talking, people try to say, who are first responders and people on the front lines of dealing with COVID-19, is that the people who are actually in the hospitals seeing patients constantly are the ones who are directly affected, who are exposing themselves and are at the highest risk. I mean, not just because, hopefully they're healthy themselves, and if they did get infected, will survive, but they are being potentially exposed to it constantly, and thus more likely to catch it. And PPE it's something to be aware of. And this, I like that perspective, because we keep hearing different stories about what supplies are available to hospitals and are available around the country. I've heard anecdotally some areas that are doing fine, other places that are struggling. Here where I'm at in Colorado, from that geek perspective, I have been a part of, what is it? It's Make for COVID. And so it's a group that is using our 3D printers and other maker skills, sewing, things like that, to create PPE. And so I've been printing the headbands for face shields with my 3D printers that I have that I keep donating, as well as we have people who have been doing as simple things as doing 3-hole punches in flat or in transparency screens, things like that, to make the shields for it, as well as people who I know sewing, who are doing face coverings, masks, things like that. And I know in Colorado, we have on the group the requests from our local hospitals and such for additional PPE. And so we've been cranking. I think the group I'm in has donated so far like 21,000 some pieces.
That's amazing.
And we are still cranking them out, trying to add more, because these are things that for the most part you use for a period and then toss. They are a disposable aspect in the medical field. And so that's why we need to keep producing them. And so it makes sense that they would prioritize for the actual care of individuals that PPE, so that everybody has it that needs it. So as you were saying, Nick, for everything transitioning for you to be online essentially, or from home, what kind of things are you doing for your learning as such that are similar or different from what you would be doing? I mean, obviously lack of direct interaction with patients and such in this time frame, but What are you still
Mhm.
doing to maintain and continue your learning process? Because I know there's also a press today to get as many people through where you're at as possible
Mhm.
so that we can get more medical professionals into the field.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the kind of calculation that goes into it is the trade-off between how much benefit can we provide as medical students being in the hospital versus the cost of having to use PPE on us to keep us safe. And at least at this point, they've decided that it's not worth the risk to the healthcare providers that need to be there to use for the PPE that they need, and the amount of benefit that we as third-year students, not doctors yet, obviously, provide is seemed to be that was the result of that calculation. But so online, what we're doing is a lot of modules. So kind of clicking through cases. You'll be given hypothetical case with a specific presentation. You click through it. Kind of pick a differential diagnosis list. Put studies that you want to do, write summaries of them, and then so that's kind of how they've done kind of like a storytelling type thing modules for our learning. And there's certain websites that have tons of them that take probably about 30 to 45 minutes to get through. So it's almost like an interaction that you might have in the hospital with a patient from, this is patient. And
We seem to have lost Nick again momentarily, so we will continue on with him, but he'll be sure to join us again in the near future.
Yeah,
And I don't
keep an
mean
eye for the
a
call.
week, I mean
We were seeing
minutes
if,
probably.
admittedly, looking to see like, is it a hiccup or is it a drop again? But it looks
I
like
think it's a drop. That's
yeah,
okay.
this one looks like a drop again. And we will get to more of the questions that you guys have been providing. Very much thankful. Earthweaver, we'll get to that when Nick comes back to us. And then Legend, as you're saying, where you're talking about fields of research and such, same kind of thing. We'll get to those as we get Nick back when he calls us back to see what that connection is. So shucks, the challenges of the interwebs and Skype.
Yeah, that's all right though. How about we take an early break then? How about we take maybe a couple song break, and then that way we can wait for to come back.
Absolutely can. We can go ahead and take a break right now. Feel free to continue to message us your questions, or if you want, you can email at vtwshowx@gmail.com, and we can jump in and provide additional questions to Nick. Anything you have for a third-year medical student and what's been going on in his life. As well as for us, as always, things we're always interested in what you've been doing with your time, whether you are continuing to be social distanced or if you are doing things, how you are passing your time in these difficult periods of time. So actually with that, we can keep going since Nick just jumped back on. Otherwise we're going to take a quick break, but hey, you got back in time. So with that though, another question came in from Earthweaver. And this is something where he said, might have missed this in the early part of the show when he first jumped in, but he was saying that he's curious, Nick, what field are you leading towards as you're going through your school? What is your focus?
Well, that's a really complicated question, but I'm happy to answer it. So right now, I'm leading towards the field of neurology. Like I said, a couple of I haven't done yet as part of my third-year core rotations, and one of those is neurology. Now, because we're online right now, it was actually supposed to take place last month, and then it got moved to this month. And then I didn't want to have to take it online because that's the specialty I want to go into. I want that to be in person. So I was able to get in touch with my administration, and we switched it. So right now I'm slated to take that in July, take that rotation in July. So having not rotated in a specialty that I'm interested in is like really weird because right now is, the times that you're supposed to be up, like getting your applications ready to be applying to these programs. But I am interested in neurology just purely based off of my classes that we had during my first year of medical school, and so the theory of the brain, the central nervous system, and pathologies are just so interesting. And it's one of those systems, those organ systems that we definitely know least about. And so there's so much ground to gain in terms of research and treatment options. So, and then also something so cool about neurology is, to me at least, it's the organ that you use to interact with the world, sight, smell, touch, language. It's your brain. It's you, essentially. If you subscribe to that type of philosophy on mind and everything, it's the structure of your brain is you. And so I just think it's so cool, and hopefully I like the rotation and I like the medical practice of neurology. I just don't know yet. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. It's very complicated, and I wish it wasn't so complicated, and I wish I could tell you everything about it. But it's one of those things. I've shadowed a couple doctors in specific clinics that really focus kind of small, just minutia of neurological, medical specialties. So I'm still waiting to figure out. It's possible that I changed. I told you I started on OBGYN
Yes.
as the first rotation, and I never thought I'd want to do that. And then I'm in the rotation. I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. I could totally do this. And then you go to your emergency medicine rotation. You're like, oh my God, I'm helping these people that are in trouble. And then you go to your psych rotation. These are so cool. So it's like I'm all over the place. I'm definitely not.
Well, but
I
this
haven't got that figured out. So
this sounds really good though, because it sounds like you have a genuine interest in kind of all things medical, and so for you, getting that little touch or taste of each different specialty, all of it sounds like it has interested you and has excited you in some way. And I think that's actually really cool, because to me, that's the kind of personality that provides someone who will know enough about whatever it is in medical scenes that even if you run into someone who is within your focus, if they have other issues and symptoms that might lean elsewhere, it'll give you a better chance to say, yes, we can deal with this, but we also need to make sure they get seen in this way. Things like that. So I think that actually sounds like, for me, the kind of doctor I would want to have available to me is someone with that much general knowledge and interest.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly the thought process I went through as I'm going through rotations, especially one that I'm pretty sure I don't want to do, like say general surgery. I don't want to do general surgery, but while I'm on the rotation, or for example, a rotation that I don't know if I want to do it or not. So the way I think about it is I had better learn as much as I can about this specialty in case I want to do it. I want to look good when I'm on my rotations. But if I don't want to do it, I also need to know as much as I can about the specialty, because I'm going to be referring. You got to know when to refer patients to a specific specialty. So it's kind of the thought process that you outlined there, Wayne.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm curious. Like, you mentioned your psych rotation a couple of times, but we haven't heard about your experiences of it and what you felt of it. Did you enjoy it? Was it something that interested you at all? Really?
I loved it. Oh, it was really cool. Yeah, it's really fascinating.
So this is psych, as in this isn't psychology. This is psychiatry, right?
Psychiatry, right? Yeah. So the medical diagnosis of psychopathologies and the treatment of them with pharmacotherapy or cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's kind of like that. I did 2 weeks at the VA that's close by here. That was more of an outpatient setting. So seeing patients who, just come in for depression or some bipolar, some chronic medical psychological conditions that are treated in the outpatient setting. And then I also worked in an inpatient hospital in a psychiatry ward, essentially where patients are inpatient there and treated. It was just really fascinating. All of my attendings were just so nice, and they really. You can get one of two kind of situations when you're rotating. Either the attending and residents can really not want anything to do with you, and not in the sense that like it's malicious, but they're busy, and so sometimes they're like, "Yeah, follow me, come with me," or they kind of give you a cold shoulder. But then other times they really welcome you onto their healthcare team, like I described, really, where they ask you questions, they want you to make decisions, and then they question you, and so it was just a really good experience. I learned a lot, and psychiatry, psychology, mental health is one of those areas that I think is super important, and I think that everyone could learn more about mental health, and they'd be better off for it.
Absolutely.
I just tried to learn as much as I can about it, and conversations that you have with people with mental health issues are the exact same conversations you have with anybody. And it's really interesting to learn their perspectives and to learn about them and to think differently and to put yourself in. You really have to put yourself into that mindset. Whatever's wrong with someone, just listening to them, and it's just cool. I think it made me a better person, and I think learning about mental health would make anybody a better person. So I'm special. It was just a good repetition. Yeah, it was cool.
Nice.
I think the one thing that we're seeing that's a common theme from all of these various different subfields of medicine is that what makes you a good physician is being able to empathize with your patient, understand where they're coming from, and that can help you with your diagnosis of what's going on with them as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So we're coming up to that's the 1 hour mark. I think it might be wise that we take our break just now.
Yep, all ready for that. So with that, we are going to jump out here real quick, and it's a doctory field theme, and so it's not a long break. I've got about a 2-minute song in here for us, but it's going to be as we do our video game remixes. This one coming from OC Remix, it's Dr. Mario, a doctor you can trust. And so with that, everybody, you're listening or watching Show X here on Twitch and YouTube, as well as Facebook and everywhere else. If you have any questions, feel free to email in at vtwshowx@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And go ahead and share us out. We're giving out a lot of keys, everybody. And so we're happy to get you doing more with your time away from work and people. So we're giving out more video game keys that you can play to help keep yourself busy. But with that, we'll be back in just over 2 minutes, and we will see you then.
Okay, feel free to go.
Here we go. I am Dr. Mario, and I'm the cure for you. Just lay down on the table, and we'll see what we can do. It might hurt a little, but it's something you can bear. You have been infected by a dynamite pleasure chair. So Dr. Mario is a doctor you can trust. Give you lots of medicine so you don't get bust. So turn your head and cough, turn your head and cough. Drop your pants and turn around and turn your head and cough. You have creepy crawlies that run deep inside your spine. Dr. Mario will make all your insides clean. My brother Luigi does now his PhD. So as far as doctors go, I guess you're stuck with me. So Dr. Mario is a doctor you can trust. Give you lots of medicine so you don't get bust. So turn your head and cough, turn your head and cough. Drop your pants and turn around and turn your head and cough. Let's go! Wah-ha! Wahoo! Wah! Woo! Ha-ha! Woo! Game over. Game over. Game.
You're listening to Show X on btwproductions.com.
I am realizing that I need to go through and still have us re-record or improve like all of our transitions, things like that, where as we are now focused on the video side of things and not having
Listening.
listening to and make it like watching and stuff like that now. And
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
I have on my queue to like re-record a whole bunch of our little clips and intros and such and things. So all the updates we need as we go video. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. Hopefully you had a good quick break there. I like that during it, Legend Tinker was mentioning like Dr. Mario was one of my mom's favorite games and asking if they have any modern day versions, which I don't know, but if anyone would, it would be Copy. because Copy is our retro gaming guru, and she would likely be able to tell us whether they've done more with Dr. Mario other than having versions on the original. I don't know if it was NES that it came out. I know they had versions on most of the consoles, Super Nintendo, and they had it on Game Boy and stuff like that. So other ones like that.
I think our audio went through during the break, by the way, because I think when I said to you, Wayne, just before we went live, we are talking about getting the voices replaced because they all say listening instead of watching.
Yeah.
Oh
no, I had kicked us back on right then. That's right when I kicked us back on.
Okay, it was intentional.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, can't have dead air. And so as soon as the song ended, I kicked us back on.
Oh, okay. See, generally, I like to know when you're on air, so you don't say anything ridiculous or swear. Or...
Are you kidding? We are consummate professionals.
Yeah, that's Wayne just tried to abuse me a little bit there by putting me on air without knowing it. So welcome back. Thank you everybody for listening. And we are doing a little promotion today where we're trying to give out some free Steam keys. And it's not just these cheap, buy 10 random keys online. These are some good games out there, including XCOM Enemy Unknown Complete is one of the keys we give out. Borderlands Game of the Year Enhanced Edition. A couple of NBA games, not my thing, but if you're into that, that's cool. BioShock the collection, and many others as well. So please, all we need is a follow to give a key into the chat. So if you're the first one to grab it, you might be the one to get the free game. So be sure to retweet us on Twitter, share our post on Facebook, and that increases the chances of us dropping keys if somebody follows us. So we're chatting with Nick, who's a medical student here in Michigan, and we're discussing, so far it's been his experiences in learning medicine. And I feel like the conversation is about to go in the direction, we kind of hinted at it before, but didn't quite get onto it, of coronavirus, how it's affected his studies. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Nick, was you said that a lot of your rotations have been postponed and everything. Is that affecting your effective graduation date? Is it affecting your studies in the long term?
As of right now, talking to our administration, no. But that's obviously the fear, and they don't want that because they want as many doctors out there as they can. So right now they're replacing our curriculum with online learning modules and online learning experiences. So far it's been pretty seamless and good. I mean, they're kind of keeping us trucking along. The very first month when everything shut down, they didn't really know what to do. And so they kind of put in a placement online class, and then we got something moved to fourth year. But now I am scheduled to graduate on time. So, but
that's good to hear.
Yeah, it's the issue is board licensing, right, that are taken in public testing centers are having been toned. So I think right now they're prioritizing getting those final licensing exam. So kind of in that spot where I'm not extremely crucial, but they still want to make sure that we graduate on time. So yeah,
makes sense. And hey, it's a hell of an experience to live through. I mean, for somebody who's working in medicine, studying, because it means that you're going to be more experienced than a lot of doctors who would be in your position right now. Because in 5 years' time, you'll have been through an epidemic. Not many doctors can say they've done that at this point.
Right. Yeah.
It's going to be a strange boon to your career in the sense of experience, if not, even though it's a detriment to the world, obviously.
Yeah. I think there's going to be certain specialties that go like totally telemedicine route, like psychiatry and probably a lot of family medicine, general practitioner stuff, like medication refills. A lot of times doctors want you to come in because they want to see you before they prescribe you new medication. So I think if this whole resurgence again after kind of the nadir, then it's just very interesting. It's very unknown how certain specialties will adapt and change. And so you kind of rolling with the punches, going with the flow. It's almost like I kind of have a back seat because I'm not really in it yet, but I'm about to be. So
sure,
I'm trying to stay as informed as I can, but at the same time, I'm just kind of watching everything go by and seeing how it evolves. It certainly hasn't deterred me away from my being a doctor.
That's good. Well, you have a very interesting perspective because I think when most people, at least who are not actually connected to the medical field, when we think about how coronavirus will affect medicine in the future, we don't even think about the subfields. We just think about the general picture of the entirety of medicine. But you're actually talking about individual specializations and how each department almost will work with this and how it will change them in the future. That's a really interesting perspective. Thank you. I also had another question. That was from Hando saying, what are your thoughts on VR telemedicine? So virtual reality telemedicine.
Virtual reality telemedicine. So I would certainly say it has its limitations as far as a physical exam goes. Probably about the same limitations as a video chat would go as far as telemedicine. I mean, I haven't actually experienced much VR. I've never sat down in like a VR machine. I've always wanted to. Like I want to so badly play one of those like fruit splashing video games.
Oh, you're talking to the right guys.
Really?
In fact, I'm leaning over to get it right now.
Oh, I want to so badly. It's just such a dream of mine. One day, obviously, it's going to be ubiquitous, I hope, virtual reality. But, I mean, I can't imagine it being any more beneficial than just a video chat, because with virtual, you can't feel the patient. So you can't really do a physical exam besides observation with your eyes. And my guess would be that a video would provide the same level.
Yeah, I think
I don't know.
With the technology side of what I have followed, because I'm an advocate for VR, seeing it in kind of the medical profession, it's still, I think, cutting edge in a lot of places, and you don't see it available everywhere. But they've talked a lot about having essentially telesurgery, being able to provide robotics and some levels of actually having a rig set up for professions of like specialty surgeons, things like that, who they're able to get into a rig with VR with stereoscopic cameras so they can see the depth and things. And on the other end, have robotic arms that are mimicking their movement, and such that the idea in best case scenarios is anywhere that's a little more remote, where it would be difficult to get a specific, a very specialized doctor in there, as long as they had that kind of rig, which is still going to be a significant investment. But to get it there, you could theoretically bring professionals from anywhere in the world to perform that surgery. Yes, there's limitations. I think there are some examples out there where it has been performed, some various levels of surgery, but at the same time, there's a lot that has to happen for it to work, because there's a lot of technological hurdles around that you as we've experienced in a Skype call today, you can't have a hiccup in your internet connection with someone who is getting ready to cut something in someone's body virtually, right? Things like that.
Absolutely.
But I think that's part of the idea of it. Separate
you
of
asked,
that,
you asked our opinions, Nick. I was just going to say that I know nothing about medicine, obviously, and I think there's going to be obvious issues, as Wayne mentioned, with it being online, and a dedicated connection is never going to be trustworthy, no matter what. Until we get some sort of Ansible device or something in the future, using quantum physics or something. But one of the things, there's a very similar technology that I think is already in use from what I've read anyway. So I used to work with British Telecom in the UK, and they were doing a lot of research into augmented reality. So you'd have basically something that looks like a VR device on your face, like a pair of glasses almost, but kind of here. And it would have cameras attached to it. And what it would do is when you look down, you would see everything as you normally do, but you might see some additional stuff on top. For them, it was using it for fixing internet cable boxes and everything. So if you have a beginner engineer who has never done it before, in theory, anybody could sit down with these glasses on and be told how to open up the cabinet, which wires to cut and move around. And, when you see one of these cabinets, there's often 10,000 different multicolored cables moving from place to place. And you can only really tell the difference between color and strange ID codes. That means very little to humans, but it means a lot to certain engineers who are specialized. So if you have these augmented reality glasses, you could technically do their job. And I'm not suggesting that surgeons should be replaced with, anybody who has glasses. That's not my point at all. My point is that eventually, if there's maybe a specialized type of surgery that maybe only a few people know, or if you're a student surgeon who is trying to learn something for the first time, either on a cadaver or a donor, or on your first ever live patient, you could possibly be talked through it by a professional surgeon on in a different room via camera, and they could show you what they would do, and you could see their arm going in where they would do it, in front of you live. I think that's much more realistic and short term goal.
Never thought of that. Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine that being extremely useful for like remote medicine, such as in third world countries where they might not have a surgeon that could do procedures, or probably be used in military and space, things like that, which would be sweet. But yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, they're called the Da Vinci surgical machines. I don't know. Da Vinci machines. Yeah. So I mean, I've been in the OR where the surgeons, they make sure the patient's all set up. You're all in position, the machine's all set up. Just walk 10 feet away and they stick their head into a machine that's like 3-dimensional VR. It's essentially VR, and they're using little. They have like a finger loop and a thumb loop so that they can pinch, and they're just using and it's for them. So there's no reason you couldn't do that from you're in the same room 10 feet away, you're down the hallway, you're in a different county, and so forth. Yeah, that's cool.
I'm say, yeah,
I think the potential for these technologies are insane, and we are in the early stages still, right? And I think when we're seeing with the pandemic, it can be particularly useful if you want to have multiple highly skilled professionals in an area that aren't, right? That way, one person can have the skill set of 3 all working on one person.
Yeah, I mean, adversity breeds innovation for sure. So I can absolutely see the product of this whole pandemic situation.
Yeah. Well, and from like a not, student perspective, or actually in the medical field at all, I have witnessed or been able to get hold of a few VR specific programs that are focused on the anatomy, human body, and things like that. And one of the things I like about that is you're seeing perspective, right? And so you're actually seeing the depth. It's not just a static 2D image of the human body.
Relationships.
Yes. And so you start to see, it's under here, and it's things like that. And there's even some that are done because you now have the ability to change perspective, size, things like that, where there are some VR tours of the body where you actually travel through like veins and things like that into the heart. And you've got an internal perspective where you're looking throughout and saying, here is the ventricle. Here you can actually see the valves working and things like that. And it walks you through kind of the processes within the human body in VR that you can see both internally and externally. And so I've seen some value through that just as a way of curiosity and general learning that I can imagine would extend itself very well into, if nothing else, giving students, especially like now, if you had a VR rig at home and someone was trying to explain something to you, to be able to pick up an organ or something and rotate it in view and like you're holding it. I know from a gaming perspective, that just gives me a sense of perspective that I don't have just using a mouse on the screen.
Oh, for sure. Oh, that'd be so cool. I can just imagine like going for a jog through the large colon, like,
Yeah,
it'd be awesome.
Well, so, who knows? We already have devices that can be put into the body and somewhat controlled. So who knows? Maybe eventually surgery will be done internally by a pill that you swallow, then you control it through VR. Who knows, right? The future is a scary thing. I think if we tried to imagine what the internet was, or what VR or augmented reality was, even 30 years ago, we would never have guessed the wild levels that we've gotten to. So who knows where surgery technology using the latest advances in computing science could take us. So I had another question for you, Nick, as well. This is kind of more of a silly one. My wife and I have been thoroughly watching House MD.
No.
I love House. It's my third time watching it, right? And I had a friend back home who was a doctor, and I told him that similarly I was watching House, and he rolled his eyes and said, "Man, you think that he's like an expert diagnostician?" But in reality, like most things that issues that the patients have are extremely obvious, and by just taking an initial examination, you can generally work out what they have within the first 5 minutes of the show. But they set it up so that House is some genius, and and he's the best doctor in the world. But in reality, most doctors can do what he can do without all of the trickery and Sherlock Holmes style mystery solving. So when you watch, but my question was, when you watch TV shows now that are medicinal in nature, do you find yourself, rolling your eyes more than before? Can you no longer enjoy them?
Yeah, you definitely have to suspend your disbelief. So I used to watch that show a little bit. I obviously watched the show Scrubs, which I loved Scrubs.
Oh, nice.
Uh,
Yeah.
but I find it more often in the medical shows. Like I just expect it to not be realistic, so it's like not even a big deal really. But it's like the other shows where they like show an injury to someone, or like someone gets like knocked out and they fall down and then they wake up and they're fine, or things like that. It's like, I find it very difficult to suspend my disbelief because like someone will like be hit in the head with a baseball bat and like fall down and then they'll be like, oh man. I'm like, that's not how that works. You know what I mean? You're up for the count, brother. I don't think so. So it's like stuff like that, or like someone gets stabbed and then like they run. I don't want to talk about season 8 of Game of Thrones, but the unrealistic stuff that goes on where you're just like, okay, if this is realistic fantasy, what's that genre? It's fantasy. It's like literary fantasy, something like that, where it's supposed to be realistic in the fantasy setting. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I don't see that happening at all.
As I say, I think
It's like stuff like that really, I could sometimes not be the best to watch shows with.
yeah, no, I
So-
can understand.
If you're interested, we had an author on previously, who was a very interesting chap because he was actually trained as an MD. So he did he's been through all this training, he's qualified, and then I believe he is a doctor as well. But he's publishing a lot of books in his spare time because he's sort of like half doctor, half author, I guess, and he does fantasy stuff. I just wanted to recommend because I imagine that if you read his stuff, it's probably not going to have these issues. He probably wrote it from
Yeah.
the perspective of a medical perspective. His name is Kyle Alexander Romanes. If you're interested at all,
Okay.
he does some really good books actually, and I highly recommend them just because the medical perspective.
Yeah.
Um,
Sure. That was a good question. Yeah.
Um,
I don't mind the sillier question.
Well, it's funny because along those lines, one of the questions that Hando again came in the chat was, okay, time for the hard-hitting questions. MASH or Scrubs?
I didn't watch a whole lot. I remember having MASH on, like when I was a kid, like my dad would watch MASH a lot, but I was raised with Scrubs. Like I watched a whole lot of Scrubs. So every day after school.
Now, see, I
I didn't
can
really watch a
understand
whole
that.
lot of MASH.
I can understand because I'm one of those kids who grew up on MASH, and
Okay.
both being in
I
a
did too, yeah.
military family and things like that, it was kind of a little closer. Where
Yeah.
Scrubs was entertaining and fun.
Uh-huh.
MASH had a
Uh-huh.
little more for me that like, whoa. And now Hando's coming out saying that you answered correctly from his perspective.
Good. Yeah.
I would have chosen MASH myself. I prefer MASH over Scrubs, but I love Scrubs. I just really like MASH. So.
I probably have to sit down and watch MASH. I have very limited perspective. I mean, I've hardly seen a couple episodes, and that was when I was like a child.
It
I'd
makes
say
sense.
skip season 1, but otherwise the rest was great.
Well, and much like how Legend in the chat saying, I spent more time in like ER back in the early 90s and stuff like that, because for me, that was my first kind of hardcore medical drama when it came into watching things and not knowing anything about just like, oh, I accept all of this as being fact.
Yeah.
Young, ignorant Wayne. And so, no, that's funny because I appreciate the question Ken had asked about that because I know I've run into that from my training in martial arts or from my actual work perspective where I come from a military and intelligence background. When I see things like shown, I'm kind of like, really? Come on.
Yeah, I have the exact same experiences when it comes to program. So I have a PhD in computing science. So, whenever I have a lot of training with artificial intelligence, and I teach security as well, right? So I have quite a broad set of skills there. But whenever I see, for example, like Mr. Robot, or any of these shows
Anything
where you
hacking?
have this hacker man, like this. Yeah, big leather jacket, sunglasses, typing like this, and green text all over the screen. It's like, man, like in reality, when you see people saying like, oh, we're being hacked, we need to counter-hack or something, it's like, if you knew that there was something active going on, you just lean over and pull out the plug.
So many silly things. Well, on the flip side of that, because we talked about some of the things of just your preference and stuff you watch, have you actually been surprised, Nick, by anything that you've consumed where you're like, that is spot on? Holy cow. Just something where it kind of caught you off guard, where you kind of were watching for fun, but you had to stop and give credit that some show or some book or something just kind of gave it to you where you're like, huh, okay.
I can't think of a specific example of like this thing, but it'd be the example of like when someone gets like punched in the face, or someone gets like they have a bruise for their remainder of the scene, or sometimes people get like jumped and then they'll get up and like they'll still look like a movie star. And I'm like, no, your face would be effed up.
Yes.
So, like I watch a lot of MMA, and so like I'm familiar, and I've also sutured a lot of lacerations in the emergency department. That's a common thing they'll have a medical student do is, oh, we got a laceration repair, go sew this up. So I'm pretty familiar with like cuts, and so when I see, I always appreciate it when just like an injury has like realistic consequences. Like the perfect example is Ned in season 1 of Game of Thrones, when they stab him in the leg and then he has a limp. Right? It's like stuff like that. It's like I want to see
it carries
that
over.
limp. I want to see that cut. Okay. Yeah.
Well, and so you talked about how you watch MMA, but from your background and such, from studying, when you see some of the interactions and like punches or kicks getting landed against an opponent, do you see it from that other perspective of like, yes, it looks like this, but I know behind the scenes exactly what tissue is being affected, and because it hit there, there's a higher likelihood that this kind of injury may occur.
It's super hard to watch sometimes because like it's interesting being in like the medical field and wanting to be a doctor and help people, but like I also, I mean, I was a wrestler, so like I've always enjoyed the combat sports, and so it's like I love a great clean roundhouse kick knockout, but at the same time I'm like oh my god, he certainly has brain damage, because hitting your head enough to go unconscious, that's brain damage. I've had a few concussions myself, and it's not something that's comfortable. And so it's definitely from that perspective of watching, it's like yes, and then it's like oh no, like you see that I don't know if you watch a lot, but there's like a posturing that happens when you get knocked out. It's called decorticate or decerebrate posturing, where your arms kind of go out, and and that's like a neurological phenomenon. Basically, like your brain has just stopped communicating with your muscles because it's like has this trauma going on. It's just trying to assess and just jumbled. And so, you have all these synapses in your spinal cord that override once you don't have the cortical innervation from up top. It kind of becomes overridden, and so like you just go into this posture that's default essentially. And I don't know if you're familiar with liver shots, but like a liver shot knockout, there's like a neurological reaction that happens with the vagus nerve that just drops your blood pressure, and you see people just kind of crumble. And a lot of people are like think, oh, like they just got hit with a body shot and it just hurts. But it's a neurological phenomenon where your body, through evolution, has this response where you kind of crumple down to the side and guard your organs that are super. So
that's super interesting.
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
I think it's cool. I don't like seeing the super brutal knockouts. So those kind of sometimes make me feel not warm and cozy.
Yeah,
that's
the
not
ones
the
where
goal when you're watching two men fight.
Oh, the one where you see it and you're like, somebody, like, get the doctor in there now.
Studying, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely have certain perspectives where sometimes doctors, when they stop fights, they just get reamed by fans being like, this person doesn't know what they're doing. They could still fight, but I usually side with if it's just a sport. It's just a game. Well, it's not just a game. It's a sport, and so safety first. But yeah, Wayne, what? Oh,
sorry, go ahead. I didn't realize you were asking a question. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to ask Wayne, what martial arts do you do?
So it's funny because I wrestled in middle school and high school as well. That was something my family kind of participated in. My older brother and I definitely, as well as soccer for a lot of my family. But for me, I started off in like Taekwondo back in the day as a child. Progressed on to, after being in the military and getting here in Denver, I found a really great classic Kung Fu studio that I went through for a few years because they shared classical weapons, which is a big draw for me. And then what I've been doing for the past basically 15 years is Toshindo, which is an Americanized ninjutsu that focuses on, essentially saying, yeah, ninja are real and they still exist type thing, but the focus of taijutsu, of body movement, in a very economical format, not wasting energy and such. And so a lot of joint manipulation, a lot of things taking someone's energy and distributing it back into them, and things like that. And so it's interesting for me because we do focus bits of anatomy and ways that we can really get it to like just contact and for the best effect. And we focus on things from like the neurologicals. When you talk about that, areas you can impact that will disrupt a person's ability to think and get like even the body to continue doing what they thought they were doing, because you hit it in such a way that everything lights up and all of their focus now is on that versus what they were about to do next. Things like that. So that's what I focus on.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. I wanted to learn more about like Taekwondo and striking arms,
Taekwondo has some serious, like their strikes are some of the most forceful you can ever run into.
That's scary. Yeah.
It's
yeah, they know how to hit you with the bone.
Ooh. Yeah, no, I've seen like Taekwondo has some of the best kicks in martial arts. They are bigger and some people would argue flashier, but at the same time, when you see them, like I think from the perspective, they are sometimes big enough that a less, skilled Taekwondo practitioner, I could probably see the kick and do something with. But I've witnessed some of the ones who are at the top of the game, and their foot goes from what I believe is way back here to their target so fast that even watching their entire body, I think it would be very difficult for me to be able to like interact with that without just getting struck. And I've watched some, like I love, what was that? Fight Science, I think was the show. I don't know if you ever watched that one. That where they would go into the details of different techniques and things and how it impacted. Because I watched one specific one where they did kicks and they focused on various arts and how they all applied their kicks, and they measured speed, force, all those kind of things. And they did some kind of analysis behind it saying, if someone really threw this kick from this perspective, would they be able to control it in this way versus that? Because these guys were getting full in. And what was amazing to me is the Taekwondo practitioner in that one, the scale at which their kick's power was compared to everyone else's just floored it. I was just like,
oh, that's awesome.
Woo! Ooh, that.
Right? Yeah. I did like, so at my school, there was like a Taekwondo club. So it was like basically an excuse to go like get some free lessons because I have no money. So I went and like I learned some like basic kicks, and then the coach like threw me into sparring, and I threw a kick and I kicked barefoot on like someone's elbow, and it hurt so bad. I was like out of commission for like 2 weeks. I was like, oh my God, I like bruised the bones of my feet.
Well, I was gonna say, did you hit with like the top of your foot?
Like this part of your foot. There's just like no protection.
Yep.
I hit the dude right on the elbow, and I was just like,
we always talk about, in at least from my study, hard versus soft versus hard, because as you said, that elbow being a nice sharp hard object, you never hit that with something else hard and sharp. Never a fist. That's something a palm. That's something that sidearm. Something else you hit with. Just like my own advice, never straight up punch someone's skull, because that's a big hard and you break your fist. If you need to palm or really use strike into meat, that's where you put a fist. You don't put a fist.
Lesson learned. I was like,
I cringe hearing that.
It hurt so bad. But it's fun. Yeah.
That is awesome. That's a good story. Oh gosh. Let's see.
So another one of the questions that I had for you as well, Nick, was after you graduated and you're qualified. I know you said you want to follow neurology, but where would you want to do that? Do you plan to stay in Michigan? Do you want to go elsewhere in the U.S., elsewhere in the world? What are your kind of plans with that?
I really don't know. Kind of leaving that open-ended. I'll probably end up staying in Michigan. I have all my family here and my school's here, so I have certain connections. And obviously with this whole pandemic thing that's going on, it's really everything's up in the air. There's something that fourth-year students do called audition rotations, or their elective rotations, where you go to a hospital program and rotate with them that you'll be applying to. And it's almost like an audition, essentially. And so those are kind of being shut down because of that involves travel. So it's somewhat limiting, but as far as the grand scheme, I mean, once I'm licensed, I can go. I've always wanted to go out west, and I can definitely see myself traveling abroad to do some sort of philanthropic medical work. So that's what's interested me. But I don't know yet.
We have a friend. My wife and I have a friend who is like her high school best friend, who became a doctor, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, and she joined Doctors Without Borders and went off and did all that stuff. And I think it's a very taxing and difficult lifestyle. That's her path that she chose. I don't think it's the most. I think it's very rewarding on a empathetic level and a charitable level. I don't know how rewarding it is in terms of free time or choosing where you go or anything like that. But I suppose there's a lot of paths open to you, that a lot of doors can open once you qualify.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly not ruled out. I had the opportunity, I think my first year of medical school, to go to Mexico to do kind of like a study abroad and learn about the healthcare systems there. And so that was super cool, and I enjoyed that a lot. So that kind of opened the book for the possibility. It's always, at least at this point in my life, it's always like focusing on the next couple weeks, next couple months, because there's always exams coming up, and to survive through it, sometimes you just got to take it one day at a time.
Of course, yeah. And one of the things you mentioned just before the show was this concept of imposter syndrome. I mean, I can speak a lot to that myself. I mean, like I said, I got my PhD last year, and I know that even that sort of fake kind of doctor going through that degree it makes you feel imposter syndrome to an extreme. I mean, you go to a seminar, you listen to an expert in the field, and you think, man, I just sat for an hour and I understood the first 2 minutes, and you're like, do I really deserve to I've had 8 years of education. Do I really deserve to get that degree? And you sort of eventually come to a realization that it's because everybody's an expert, but only in their very specific subfield in this academia, in research. And so, do you want to tell us about your experiences with the imposter syndrome? How you felt your classmates and colleagues have experienced over time? Do you find it fluctuates? Do you find it's kind of a static thing, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'll do my best to address it. I mean, I think first of all, imposter syndromes. There's certainly a spectrum, degrees onto which people feel this phenomenon. But at some point, everyone's going to feel that feeling that you described. Okay, I've done all these things. I'm here, but I don't feel like I belong, or I don't know as much as other people. So what does that mean for me? Am I as good as them? And it's kind of coming to the conclusion that everyone has these thoughts, and everyone experiences things differently, but at the same time we're all kind of navigating the human experience. And so feeling like you don't know, for me, what I've decided in medicine, at least, is I'd much rather understand that I don't know something than think I know it all. And I mean, that's a very common trope, but it's true. And knowing that, seeing your attendings, your attending physicians look something up and ask you a question, or you ask them a question and they say, let me look that up. It's reassuring to know that throughout my career, I'm expecting to always be trying to learn more about subjects, and I'll be looking things up, and I'll be asking for advice. So once you kind of accept that, and you understand that every doctor or every PhD that's got to their position, or any position of power, it's everyone's going through the same thing, and we're just out here to do our best. So, thank you.
I think you described it perfectly, and I think the thing you're talking about specifically is this the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? It's this concept of when you first learn of a topic or the idea of a topic, you'll think, I know about that. Like, that's not a good idea. I think I understand it. And then when if you go to a seminar or a lecture, you actually start learning about it, you quickly go from the realization of know it to nothing. And then your sort of confidence builds as you actually learn. But you need to get through that initial hill of thinking that you know something. And I think every degree has that to an extent. I know that students in computing science, it sometimes takes a long time for people to realize that they don't actually know as much as they think they did. I know that during my high school years, I was always, and in fact, this leads on to another question I have for you as well. I know during my high school years, I was always the IT guy, and so I was always asked to fix computers for family and friends. And when I started my degree, I thought I knew it all because I've been fixing computers and doing stuff for years, so it's no problem. And then about halfway through my second year, I realized that I was actually struggling, and I had to actually start paying attention and trying in class. And that was my realization of, well, yeah, I don't know everything. I had some innate talent, but it's very minimal. And so that kind of leads on to my next question for you, which is kind of a fun one. And hopefully it doesn't make you cringe too much. How much have you found people, family, and friends asking you for medical advice? Because, oh man, I bet that's a hard one to deal with.
It's not so, it hasn't been so bad, but like when I go home to visit my family, I don't bring my stethoscope with me. And so, so just get that checked out because it's usually like it's not so much my family, or my family will ask me questions, but more just like because they're curious, they want to understand, biological processes or something. Sure. But it's usually like the friends of friends who like find out that you're in medical school or something, and then they ask you something, and you're like, listen, I don't know you, I don't know anything about you. This is not. So I usually shut it. But it's easy for me though because I'm not a doctor, so I can be like, well, not a doctor yet, so sorry. Legally, I can't talk to you about anything, but I know it's true. But I go with that. So I think I'll have to get a different coping strategy once I'm actually a licensed physician. But we're gonna cross that bridge when we get to it. But I'm confident in myself that I won't. I probably will refrain from getting medical advice to people that aren't patients.
Yeah,
that's
I think
a good
that's
idea.
A really
General rule, right?
Yeah, it's a good rule. I think it's very scary, especially if they might have underlying conditions you don't know about, and then if you give advice that's therefore incorrect because you didn't have an initial history for them, you could be lost over something, and you don't want to put yourself in danger.
Yeah. And also, I mean, if I really did believe that someone had something that they medically needed investigated, I certainly would say, you need to go see a doctor in the clinical setting where they can run tests on you and do a full physical exam and get your vitals. And so if this is really something that you need to go do, I don't want you talking to me. I want you to get help. And if it's something that you really don't need help at the time with, I'll say just make it.
Yeah, no, I feel like there's kind of an easy answer there of, yeah, that sounds serious. I'd probably go to the doctor.
Yeah. If that was me, I'd go to the doctor. It's like I'm not trying to do medicine on myself. I want to go, see someone. Yes. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I think.
Thank you for that.
Well, so it's funny in a way. I have a follow up to that, not directly on friends answering or anything like that, or asking questions, but from your own experience of just seeing, because we live in a time of connectivity, the internet, and social media, people sharing their understanding of medical things online. And do you have any perhaps advice or perspective on some of the things you've witnessed society, community, people doing out there, and a recommendation perhaps to make sure people do things the right way?
I guess my advice and something that I do is I try to consume like lots of different sources. There's always I love seeing the headlines where it's like the newest breakthrough in medicine,
Yep.
and it's like, it's almost never true. It's almost, there's a research paper that mentions it anecdotally, and then news stories just run with it. So I wouldn't get your medical information from any news source. I would use the internet to look up if you really want to do research, scientific papers, maybe watch some YouTube videos on how to actually analyze the scientific papers to make decisions yourself. But yeah, I mean, like when I was in high school and a teenager before I had any medical training, like I would absolutely take medical advice from the internet. like I was all about being fit, so I just wanted to be the most fit I could be. So I'd do nutrition advice, I'd do certain stretches, and all that's good for health and wellness. But at the same time, you definitely want to question the things, the information that you're getting, and make sure that it's scientifically backed up. And now I'm someone who hasn't done a whole lot of research, so Ken, you being a PhD, maybe you could shed some light on how can a normal person find good research versus how can a normal person differentiate between, hoo-ha.
Oh, the tables have turned. I'm getting questioned.
I've
No,
been waiting.
no, thank you for the question. It's a good one, actually. And okay, I'll answer your question in a moment because I had a comment I wanted to say first
Sure.
about articles which state medical advances that are completely overplaying it. I don't know how true this one is, and I guess I was always going to ask you if you knew anything about it because it's quite interesting. I have a little notebook here that I use for writing things I find interesting, I guess, not related to work. And I said here, so 2 years ago, or no, sorry, last year, DARPA funded a study worth $77 million to create a device by Professor Michael Kahana of the University of Pennsylvania, which improved memory from a patient being able to remember 2 items on a list of 12 to being able to remember all 12 items. And it was a implant, an electronic chip that they put into the brain that I'm guessing stimulated it somehow. And they said that this was a real medical study that massively improved this person's memory. They had a brain trauma at some point, and this, I don't know how, but by some sort of stimulation of the neurocortex or whatever, managed to improve memory. And I thought that was kind of fascinating. I don't know if it's actually legitimate and if it's like a one-off in a very special circumstance, kind of like the first guy to be cured of AIDS was a kind of one-off due to very special circumstance. I don't know, but have you heard of that at all?
No, I haven't heard of that at all. Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah, right.
I think that's true. It's almost like that. What was that one movie that the premise was the pill that made you utilize the 100% of your brain? Or
that premise annoys me. I love the concept of it. Right?
Yeah.
But already use our brain. Like I hate this idea that evolution made this massive organ that we don't use pretty much at all. Like
it wouldn't be there. It wouldn't be there if you didn't use it. So
it's very, very inefficient to grow all that for no reason.
I think people get confused. Limitless. People get confused. I don't even know if this is true, but maybe you use only 10% of your brain to consciously think. But your brain is doing all sorts of stuff behind the scenes, regulating this incredible machine that you're walking around in, this meat bag that you're walking around in. So it's very complex. So brain stimulation that improves your memory. I mean, I can see it, but also at the same time, couldn't you tie someone to a chair and zap them every time that they got something wrong and make them memorize something like that? So it's like the validity of that is like, what are they doing? So it's like you kind of do have to be a hardcore scientist to understand even what's really going on. And if it's, what is it, like some thousands and thousands of scientific papers get published every single day, right?
Yeah.
And what percentage of those are actual good research and what's not?
Oh, absolutely. And that's that. And what you said, so your question to me was, how does one research a topic? I got into, you never should, I got into a debate with a couple of people earlier this week it was about this claim that the 5G technology it causes coronavirus and cancer and whatever else, right? And I took a couple of screenshots from the debate, so it's kind of funny. At one point, I asked this person who said that because the body runs on electricity and 5G produces electrical waves, that's how it causes disease or something. And so I simply asked, where did you get your degree in, neurology or human biology or where did you get your MD from? And they responded, oh, well, where did you get your PhD from? And I said, actually, this is, I said, I'm not an expert in this field, but well, if you're interested, here's my scientific papers I've published. If you're interested, it's not to do with 5G technology or the human body, but I understand how to look up scientific articles. And they were arguing with me back and forth, and they kept linking, YouTube videos from these tinfoil hat enthusiasts, conspiracy theorists, and these obscure websites, one of which claimed that they were selling Wi-Fi routers that did not use 5G technology so therefore it was safe. And they were clearly trying to make money off this. And I said, your source is clearly terrible because somebody's trying to make money off of this claim. So why would you trust them? Anyway, so that's all a side note. I eventually said to them, look, guys, if you really want to look into this, you need to link stuff that's not just news articles and YouTube videos. You need to look into the science behind it. You need to look at the scientific publications. If you want a couple of resources out there, anybody who's interested, the simplest place to go to for any, if you don't pay access for scientific journals or anything, the best place to go to is Google Scholar. Google has a specific website dedicated for scientific research. It's scholar.google.com. It's just a normal search engine like any other, except this one is dedicated to scientific publications. Now, if you want to know if something's legitimate or not, just it being there is not proof that it's legitimate. You need to not only read through the paper that you're reading, but you need to see what other people are saying about it as well. So look at citations that people have given to that paper. Because if something has 500 citations, you might think, oh, it's legitimate. But in reality, that could be 500 people saying this paper is full of crap. It's not replicable or whatever. So you need to do some reading basically, and that's the hard thing about it. It's not a quick, Google and find an article headline that proves your point. No, you need to actually look through the scientific results, see if you think they're valid, see if other experts think they're valid, and then base it upon that. And also to an extent where it was published. If you find it was published in Nature, the chances are, depending on which subset of Nature it's within, it's likely to be more valid than if it's in fake University of Mumbai that doesn't exist, by 5 people who don't have PhDs. Like it depends on a lot of factors. But do your reading, and if you really want to learn if something's legitimate or not, that's how you go about doing it. And it takes time and effort, but it's worth it in the end. And that's how science rolls. That's how it works.
Let's say to tag on to that, hey guys, you likely have some extra time on your hands right now. Would it be so hard to go beyond the first click? Maybe take whatever the subject is and Google that and see where else people have talked about whatever it is that you are wanting to add into the ether.
Yeah. In schools, I'm sure you guys remember that they used to always say, Wikipedia is not a source. Wikipedia is not a source. I use Wikipedia all the time, but definitely YouTube is not a source. So that's like the new,
absolutely
don't do research on YouTube. Reading is much better.
Yeah. Social media is not a source. Instagram is not a source. Like anywhere that anyone can upload something from their phone is likely not a source.
Yes. And if they have a product, it's not a source.
Talking about Wikipedia, right? Okay, I feel like we need to just verify, go over that a little bit. Wikipedia itself is not a source, technically, right? You should not use it for scientific purposes. However, generally speaking, the moderation that goes on Wikipedia is very good. If something's been there for more than a day, it's probably safe. The best thing to do is to check the sources at the bottom of the Wikipedia page. Even if you're doing your homework, if you're doing your homework and it says whether it's for medicine or whether it's for computing science or whatever it may be, fine, go read Wikipedia, get a general idea for the topic, then look what sources they're referring to, because a lot of the time it'll be scientific papers. And then you'll be like, okay, maybe it was legitimate because of this reason. So in your essay, don't say you got it from Wikipedia. Say you got it from the source that Wikipedia used itself. There's nothing wrong with that. I encourage it. And the good thing with Wikipedia is it's often written plainly so that anybody can understand. So it's a fantastic resource. And I hate when teachers say don't use Wikipedia. You should absolutely use it. Copy paste for all I care. I really don't care. So long as you understand the meaning behind it, that's all that matters, right? It's all the understanding and getting legitimate sources, not just trusting edits on Wikipedia that what anybody can do. Anyway, we are running to the last 7 minutes or so of the show here. So anybody in the chat, if you have any questions for the not quite but soon to be Dr. Nick, we would love to hear them, and we'd love to pass them on and ask. Nick, is there anything you wanted to bring up as well as we get to the end of the show? I don't know if you wanted to give any shout outs to anything, maybe your online presences, if you wanted to raise public awareness of anything that you're interested in.
Yeah, I don't have any online presences actually. Oddly, I know I'm in the minority of people these days, but I don't really go on anything. Only just shout out to everyone who's staying home. I think it's wonderful. Keep listening to the scientists. If you could do anything, keep listening to the scientists that know what they're talking about. But I had a great time talking with you guys. I don't have any specific questions, but it's been wonderful. It's been an awesome
Cool.
conversation.
Well, to tie back in, just because, thank you to the audience listening as we talked more medical today on the show, but reaching back into our source and our roots and when we get to all things geek and gaming, what are some of the, your, Nick, things that got you or anything you've done that you relate to gaming as distractions, either just kind of where you got into, things that you gamed back in the day, or things that you do today that are kind of where you will, when you find the time, spend a little bit of it to kind of relax or get away from your everyday grind?
Sure. I'm not a huge gamer, but the classic craft thing I'm most comfortable with that I fall into is Call of Duty Nazi Zombies. I just love killing some Nazi zombies. It's just the most relaxing thing. So I do that. I used to play Skyrim a lot, but I haven't done that so much lately. It's hard to find time to game a whole lot. I just got a new computer. I had a Mac forever, and then I finally bought a PC, which I'm talking to you on right now. And so like I've said to Ken a lot, I'm not a huge computer person, but I'm I'd like to. You know what I mean? So yes. I'm trying out here, but yeah. So I'll go home and I don't even have a gaming console actually. But I'll go home and my brother has an Xbox. I'll pretend like I'm 17 and just.
No, I got you. Well, it's funny because I stopped acquiring consoles recently into the newest generations. We'll see if I delve back in at the end of the year when the next ones come out. But primarily PC gamer, and I had big gaps in my time growing up of games because I got back into PC back in the day. But so it's everybody games or geeks out in their own way. And you mentioned COD Zombies. That was such a massive thing for so many people.
Zombies, man. That was so much fun. So much fun.
Where I only ever.
And by the way, to be a gamer, there's no requirement you must have spent $5,000 on a. No, I don't believe that. If you I'm sorry, gates open, come on in, right?
Yeah.
If you want to play Facebook games, if you want to play on your Game Boy, if you want to play on your phone, if you want to play on a huge, graphics intensive computer that you've made, or anywhere in between, I think it's everybody's welcome and it's a good time, and we all have the same hobby that we can share and talk about, and I think that's great. And blow off some steam with,
Yeah, exactly. So then, separate from just the gaming side, as I have my mantra that everyone's a geek in their own way, besides the medical side of things where it's kind of work-related and things like that, what is something that maybe people wouldn't know about you or wouldn't expect that you just absolutely geek out to? Something that you find maybe you know more than you thought you did about because you've focused on it so much in your life?
Sure. Okay. So something I geek out to for sure is anthropology, evolutionary anthropology. I love watching videos about prehistoric humans and their evolution, all the different types of human species that were on the planet at one time. Probably there's seven different human species, in Africa and Asia and the Neanderthals and so tons of genetics exist, and so how their genes play into how we are today, in a very basic way. But I love learning about that kind of stuff, so I totally geek out for that kind of stuff.
That's awesome.
Evolution. I love evolution. I think it's so cool.
If someone were just in general, wow, that sounds cool, where would I get started kind of thing? Is there a resource or be it a book, a series you've watched or something like that, that you're just actually, that is a great gateway for someone who wanted to learn a little more history of humanity?
There's a book called Sapiens.
Okay.
Might have heard of it. Forget the name of the author. But it's called Sapiens, and it's essentially the history of humans. So from when humans were first, distinctly their own species, to up to civilization and the building of cities. And so it's a really cool book that I would suggest anyone.
By Yuval Noah Harari.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. It's a wonderful book, and because we are all humans, there's something that everyone can relate to in that book. So that's really cool. Other than that, probably YouTube. I try to watch a lot of YouTube videos about this, but just like documentaries. I'll watch a lot of documentaries on that kind of thing when I have time to, or when I don't have time to, and I want to procrastinate. I'll be, this is educational, so I'll geek out for that and feel good about myself. So. Yeah.
So sometimes it feels good to waste time on something that you're still, in my opinion, leveling yourself up in some way. Gaining knowledge is it's not just that I just lost that time. I invested it just over here.
Yeah,
That's right, for sure.
absolutely.
Awesome. Well,
All right.
it is the
Thank
end
you
of the
so
show.
much. Yeah, this has been really fun. Really enjoyed having you on.
It's been awesome. I liked talking to you guys a lot. It's been a really fun time.
Well,
Is
happy
this
that
what
we
you
could.
expected for a podcast? Is this kind of what you expected to experience?
I guess so. I mean, I didn't really know what to expect, but I think it went swimmingly. I think mostly thanks to you guys.
Oh, not at all. You've been a
Very
fantastic
positive
guest.
experience. I appreciate that. I'm glad.
Absolutely.
I was a little worried.
No, all good. You are always welcome to come back. It was fun to learn a little bit more about the insights as to what it is when you're for someone who's pursuing a medical career here in the United States and the kind of learning and things that you can expect to go into. So we very much appreciate your perspective and what you provided for us today with that. Got some good questions from the IRC listening to you, so it's been a lot of fun. With that, we're going to have Ken close things out so that we can set everyone on for the beginning of their next week and hopefully what they are doing to continue to enjoy their either time away or their little more socially distanced reality that we're going through today. So Ken, if you would do us the honor.
Sure. You have listened to ShowX live on Twitch. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We very much appreciate it. You can send us an emails to vtwshowx@gmail.com. You can support us on patreon.com/showx for a minimum $1 per month. That's always appreciated. You can like us on Facebook. Go to facebook.com and search for Show Space X, and you'll find us there, no problem. You can also subscribe to us on Twitch, YouTube, and also just by following on Facebook, you'll see us go live whenever we do there too. We also have an Instagram. You can find us there, VTWShowX. And you can find us on Reddit, reddit.com/r/showx. And I think that's everything. So thank you again for hosting today, sir. We very much appreciate it. And thank you so much for joining us again, Nick. We'll hopefully
Thank you for having
welcome back anytime.
I'd love to. Yeah, thanks.
All right, everybody. So with that, we are out of here. Everybody, have a good week. We will catch you again next week.
Goodbye. See you next zombie.